So they could not deal with where they were going until they could receive instruction and be tried and be proven. His whole intent was to bring us out into a wealthy place. Go with me to Psalm 66. Psalm 66. And we're going to start there, verse 10. And we're going to read there. Along with that, we're going to go to Exodus, the 16th chapter and the 4th verse. You know, we go through seasons of different experiences in our walk with the Lord, and God has to instruct us. He has to teach us. He has to give us direction of what's necessary when we get to the place of our promised land. But before we get there, there is much instruction. There is much daily walking and understanding. Lord, what would you have for me to know today? Because I honestly have no idea. I don't know if I'm alone in that particular area, but I know that it's just a daily walk. I shared in a Bible study some time ago, we look for, a big light to pop on, but the lamp that's before our feet is how God directs us. And it's just a little bit here and just a little bit there. A little bit here, because, a lamp is not very bright, but it's just enough for you to make that next step. Just enough. And if you would trust me with that, just that next step, you're going to eventually get to the place that I would have for you. So let's read Psalm. If you have it, say amen. For thou, O God, has proved us. Thou hast tried us as silver is tried. Thou broughtest us into the net. Thou laidst affliction upon our loins. Thou hast caused men to ride over our head, my head. I went through the fire and I went through the water. Anybody been through the fire? And through the water. But read this collectively with me. Let's finish this verse together. But thou hast broughtest us out into a wealthy place. His whole intent was to bring us out into a wealthy place. So I say again to you for these next few minutes, God has so much in store for me. The children of Israel were slaves. That's all they knew. They were slaves. Not only physically, but mentally. Not only mentally, but emotionally. But God wanted to take this group of slaves and make a nation. A holy nation. But the space between slavery and the promised land is being tried and proven. We cannot so much relate to the term slave in today's time but maybe you can relate to the word ghetto. Anybody can relate to the term ghetto? In the ghetto, you hustle. Oh, wait a minute. I got everyone's attention. You say, I'm speaking your language now. I'm down your street. But it's the same thing. You are in bondage. And you're held hostage to the system. So you have to do what you have to do to make it. So to get us from that place of hustling and to get us out of that ghetto or slavery mentality, God has to instruct us. Because now he brought them out. Notice this. He brought them out. But what they came out of was still in them. So they could not deal with where they were going until they could receive instruction and be tried and be proven. And where we are, where you are, where your neighbor is, God has so much. It's just waiting to be possessed, but not without instruction. Look at your neighbor and tell them, not without instruction. So a season will only last so long. You know, we've had some hot days this particular summer. And before you know it, you know what? We're going to be shoveling snow. Now, we complain, and I see some of y'all fanning. I see some of y'all got beads of sweat on here. But before you know it, we're going to be bundling up. Bishop told us a long time ago, it's hot now, but don't throw away your winter coat. Because the season is going to change. And sometimes it seems unending. You know, you can be in a season, our days are long and years are short, but it just seems like I'm never going to get out of this. But your season is coming to a change. And God is bringing us into a wealthy place. So let's go to Exodus, the 16th chapter. Elder Corey, and if you would read the 4th verse, Exodus 16 and 4.
Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven.
Now notice, he's saying that I'm going to provide. Now this is a people that have come out and they don't have anything. What they left Egypt with. But now they don't know. So what they're depending on is whatever God will provide for them. So he tells Moses to tell them what? I will what?
I will rain bread from heaven for you.
Their actual physical nourishment. I will rain bread. That's not an analogy. Did y'all catch that? That's not an analogy. That's actual bread from heaven. I will what?
Rain bread from heaven for you.
And
the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day. That I may prove.
Now notice this. That I may what?
Prove them.
I may prove them.
Whether they will walk in my law.
No. Now, notice this. What they received from God, they had to literally depend on what came from heaven on a daily basis. But he says something particular. He says, I want you to have a daily rate. What is your daily rate? This is how the Lord gave this to me to share with you. I want you to imagine as we're sitting in here that somebody goes outside and says, "It's raining money." Hold on. So Sister Mackenzie's closest to the door right there. Sister Mackenzie just happens to step out in the vestibule, and she comes in and interrupts the message. It says, "It's raining money." Money, y'all. Ones, fives, tens, 20s, hundreds. Think about this now. It was a symbol then, or it's a symbol now, but it was real at that time. I want you to really see what's in yourself. If you would take that imagination and think, you go outside and it's raining money. Raining money. What would you do? It's raining money. There's a point in all this. Now, I have a good relationship with everyone in here, I believe. But I would have to acknowledge that if it was raining money, come on. Every man for him. How many of us would be running over Mother Rigsby? How many of us would trample over Mother Perkins? I mean, really, you know how we do when it's a dinner. This ain't even dinner, this is money. But couldn't you just imagine filling your pockets till you couldn't feel them no more? Getting your children, I'd have Jeffrey and Emmy, come on, get all. Get all you can get. Take your shoe off, fill your shoe up. That's right, socks, see? See how the mind goes? Take off that hat. Whatever I can do to get as much. Now, ain't that ghetto? Ain't that how we hustle? Isn't that a slavery mentality? I'm going to get all I can now. So God has to teach and instruct his people. You are only allowed to have a certain rate every day. Which meant that there was no wasting, yes, but ultimately it meant that you had to trust that what you got on the next day was going to come. Because I only got enough for today. And we box God out when we continue to do things for ourselves to make sure I have enough. But he said, if you will only trust me, I'm going to take care of you on tomorrow. But today, you have a certain rate. What would you do with your certain rate? What would you do? So the 16th verse of that same chapter emphasizes and supports what I just shared with you, but I want you to read it as it's being read. Exodus 16 and 16. What does it say?
This is the thing which the Lord hath commanded. Gather of it every man according to his eating.
According to his eating.
An omer for every man.
A measure.
According to the number of your person.
According to who's in your household. Take what?
Take ye every man for them which are in his tent. And the children of Israel did so. And gathered some more, some less.
Some less. Now, Elder Walker and Missionary Walker would gather more for their household than I would in mine, because they have more children than me and my wife have. So God was making sure that there was an equal distribution, and that no one had much more than this one, and this one didn't have much less than that one, but everyone had an equal share. But does it really operate that way? It didn't during that time either. Let's read on.
And when they did meet it with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing over.
He that had gathered much had nothing over.
And he that gathered little had no lack.
Had no lack.
They gathered every man according to his eating. And Moses said, let no man leave of it till the morning.
Yes.
Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses.
But they did not obey the commandment. That's the portion of us that is looking out for us. That midnight snack. That extra portion. So what did it say?
But some of them left of it until the morning. And it bred worms. And stank. And Moses was wroth with them. And they gathered it every morning. Every man according to his eating. When the sun waxed hot, it melted. And it came to pass that on the 6th day.
Now notice this. It came to pass on the 6th day. So this happened every day. But on the 6th day. Everybody say the 6th day. Something peculiar happened on the 6th day. What happened?
They gathered twice as much bread.
They gathered twice as much.
2 omers for one man. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said unto them, this is that which the Lord hath said.
Yes.
Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord.
Yes.
Bake that which ye will bake today. And seed that ye will seed. And that which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept until the morning.
So on the 6th day they received twice as much, because God wanted that 7th day to be reverenced as holy and signify a day of rest. So he didn't want them gathering nothing on the 7th day, but what they received on the 6th day would be enough for the 6th day and the 7th day. So God is bringing his people. He's training them. He's instructing them, just like we do with our children. We start with letters, or we'll start with the alphabet. We start with characters. Those characters turn into words. The words turn into sentences. The sentences turn into paragraphs. The paragraphs turn into chapters. The chapters turn into a book. But we don't learn the book before we learn what the character is. We don't learn the chapter before we learn what the sentence is. And God is building his people slowly but surely. He's building them on a week basis. He's saying, if you will just trust me for 7 days, I'm going to provide for you. But that 7 days is eventually going to turn into 7 years. And that 7 years is eventually going to turn into decades where God is built. Don't we serve an all-wise wisdom God of how? But he works in steps. He works in steps. And if we forget the week or we ignore the week, he can't teach us how to build over years. If we don't do it like he did it over building years, we cannot live a fruitful life. So he's building us. Now notice this. This is a week's basis. But go with me to Leviticus, the 25th chapter. Leviticus, the 25th chapter, and the 20th verse. Because God is now moving where he's instructing us that you were depending on this on a daily basis, but eventually this manna is not going to continue falling from heaven. At some point, it's going to stop when you enter into your promised land. And I want you to understand that there's a certain rate that I want you to have every day. And that certain rate is something that you cannot ignore when you get in your promised land. Because if you do that, you're going to inherit, but then disinherit. You're going to get there, but you're not going to be able to stay there. I'm going to bring you there, but for some reason, you're not ready for what I'm bringing you to because you missed the instruction that I gave you. So what does Leviticus 25 and 20 say? You start at the 19th verse.
And the land shall yield her fruit. And ye shall eat your fill and dwell therein safety.
In safety,
And if ye shall say, what shall we eat the 7th year?
So now he's instructed them on the 7 days. But now he's given them instruction on what they should do in the 7th year. Now notice this. They're asking because he's telling them, I don't want you to do anything in the 7th year. For a whole year. And they say, well, what do you want us to do in the 7th year? Or what are we going to eat? Have you ever asked yourself, how am I going to make it during that time? And this is what they said. What are we going to eat in the 7th year if we can't work? If we can't plow the field? If we can't harvest? And what does he say?
Behold, we shall not sow, nor gather in our increase. Then I will command my blessing upon you in the 6th year.
In the 6th year, I'm going to do something different that I didn't do any other year. Just like I did on the 6th day for the 7th day. Now notice what he says. What?
And it shall bring forth fruit for 3 years.
I'm going to bless you so much. In the 6th year, that you're going to have enough for 3 years. Now stay with me. Stay with me.
And ye shall sow the 8th year. Yet of old fruit until the 9th year. Until her fruits come in, ye shall eat of the old store.
Now there's a lot packed in those few verses. But let me just share it again another way. The 6th year would be just as normal. They wouldn't work harder, but they would receive 3 times as much. Nothing of their own good, but because God reigned that way in that year. Now in the 7th year, they would not work. So they would receive how they ate from what they gained in the 6th year. Y'all follow me so far? Now, how was they able to do that? Because during the 6th year, they did not consume everything that they gained for 3 years. They had a certain what? Every day. So God is teaching them. When I rain in abundance on you, you have to remember a certain rate every day. Because you don't know what the next 7 years may look like. You have no idea. It looks good now. I mean, all the bills paid, children fed, all the barns looking good, nothing malnourished. But you have no idea. I want you to have a certain rate. So I gave you this much so that for the next 3 years, God is always, he's our Alpha, but he's also our Omega. And while we can only see our present, he's always looking forward and preparing for something greater. So I'm going to give you. So in the 7th year, they would not work. Now notice this. The 8th year, they would work, but they would eat of still what they had in the 6th year. Now, is this instruction or what? This is how God is bringing his people into the promised land. But it starts little by little by little. So in the 8th year, they would work, but they would eat of the old store. You know, them greens that you froze. So they would take what they had in the 8th year and use it for the 9th. It's amazing how God is teaching his people to enter into their promised land. He has to instruct us. Now let's go to Leviticus, the 26th chapter. In the 3rd verse, we'll start reading there.
If ye walk in my statutes, keep my commandments, and do them.
Now, if you can accept what I've taught you and instructed you and shared with you and brought you along this far, I'm going to bless you like you have never saw before. I'm going to do something because I proved you. I tried you. You were tested with the little. And I wanted to see what you did on a daily basis when it was raining money. I wanted to see if you just got enough for your store and no one else's. I wanted to see how you dealt with your neighbor. I wanted to see, now that you know what I expect, I'm going to change things around. Look at your neighbor and tell him God is about to change things around. So he tells them, if you walk in my statutes, if you obey my commandments, if you took of what I had given you and you did what was right with it, look out. God has so much in store for you.